we've got an extensive guide for you today, so we're going to skip the intro and get right to it. But first, as a word of warning, this is not, I repeat, not a meta build, not a meta guide. So if you were looking to play a rainbow build or something that's more on meta, just a heads up, this is probably not for you. But if you are looking for a single or a dual element build, I'm going to go over and break down the entire skill tree pretty much, minus a few things involving the weapons. So there will be something in this for everyone. So if you're not planning to buy extra skill trees or do a dual element build, then just be aware this is probably not for you. Do not do this. Do not do this, okay? If you're a free player only and you don't want to respec, don't do this. There, I spent a minute warning you not to do this. PSO is not a complicated game, and I personally disagree a lot with some of the metas I've seen floating around. So I went and asked questions for the supposed expert skill builders, and because I didn't get any answers or satisfactory answers to some of my questions, I was able to get helped, but some of my questions I couldn't find the answer to. So I went ahead and did a lot of research, and I tested some of these things out, and I'm going to share with you what I have learned and some of the things available online. The video will be broken up into 3 parts. The first part is going to be the bulk of it. That's going to be the extensive skill tree guide, where we discuss all the skills on the tree. Part 2 and 3 will be more about my personal build, as in the actual techniques that I'll be using for the most part. And the third portion will be how I plan to use those techniques and what a Splashy is. First thing, straight out the gate, as I've already shown you, you can get to level 75 without taking a single point in the skill tree, so do not feel rushed to take them. They will, of course, help you a lot, but you can clear the game pretty simply without taking these if you just focus on getting a weapon to enhance your primary attack ability. I've also allowed you to take a peek at my projected progression for level 95, but I'll be showing you things right here in the skill simulator from level 75, because that's what the current cap is until like a month from now. Alright, so we're going to go through the tree and compare what I picked versus what's more the meta pick. I'm going to explain why I chose what I did, and why you may or may not want to do the same thing. I'm not trying to convince you to do this. This is a personal build that I just wanted to share because I think it's better than it might, some people might perceive it. Alright, so from force, obviously you're going to want to get technique power up. Everybody tells you to do it. There's totally nothing wrong with that. It is exactly what you should be doing. You should be grabbing this really quick because it's 5 points in the tree for 120 plus 120 power, which is really great for the power ratio. Things like Tech Power 2 and completing Tech Power 1 are things that are not in the meta, and they're not recommended at all, but I did do it, and you'll see why later. But if you don't want to take those, don't worry about it. You can totally save the points. There's 20 points from this, there's 7 points from that, 27 more points that you can put wherever you like. If you like other aspects of this, but you don't like that, there you go. I actually originally took Talis fast throw, as you may have noticed, and I will be making a new tree just for this one point, so I can go ahead and put it into Tech Charge A Edition. And I realize most people tell you to do that in Techer, but the way all the math worked out for me, it would be better for me to put in force, as tight as force is always going to be for me, the way I have it built. So that way Techer will have an even 10. I'm going to be real with y'all real quick. The reason my setup this way, especially for earlier game, is because the more I get my tech, the base number up, because getting it to 1350 versus it being at 1120, I have essentially added more than 20% to my base stat, rather than investing in these, which add 10%. So you might be scratching your head going, oh, okay. So there was some method to this completely backwards madness. Yes, that is exactly what I did. Instead of going for plus 10% on this occasion or on that occasion, I try to go for what is going to give me a bonus all the time, or half the time, or 75% of the time, versus 25% or less than 50 basically. So I try to think about when am I going to use something, how often. And I decided to go for light to pair with my ice, not because it's a no-brainer that, wow, why would you think anything else, but because it is going to make life easier in Fall versus Falls boss, those type of bosses who are generally only weak against light and wind. Wind does a lot less damage, light does more damage. Wind is very cheap to cast, light is medium. It's okay. It's not great. It's kind of heavy, but not super heavy. Dark is very heavy. Ice is pretty heavy too. I considered going dark for just solo running pretty much anything that doesn't have a falls boss at the end of it or somewhere in it. Dark would be pretty good once we get crafting. I'll explain that when I get to the abilities later. But since that simple explanation for this build that you can see with your own eyes isn't quite good enough then to just say, oh, yep, that's what I did. I wanted to show you a few things that I saw in the meta builds that I was like, wait, why are you doing that? So this one right here, element conversion. I'm not going to talk about the bug that I had happen to me in-game where it said something else for this. It was a visual bug. But essentially, the way that this really works, because it looks like it gives you 50%, and you're thinking, 50%? Why are you doing this, that, or anything else aside for 50%? That is so awesome. Listen, everything in this game, it's very simple. You just have to read it. Don't assume things. Don't listen to what other people tell you stuff means. Just read it. And not even, the skill calculator is great, but seriously, like in-game, just take the time and read what stuff says. Look up what the wiki says, but read what it says in-game. That's the most important thing you can do, okay? Convert your weapon's element level into a technique damage bonus. What this really does, okay, is it takes 50% of your element level, which let's say it's 60, you know, it's at the max, it's 60 for your element level. Half of that is 30, okay? It's going to add 30 to your weapons, not your weapons technique damage bonus, but to your technique damage bonus. It doesn't say where in the algorithm or in the math that it adds it to, but I'm telling you, you're getting plus 30 under those circumstances, so it's not bad. I could see why people might want to take it, especially if they're just getting the 35% all the time. But I'm just letting you know, like 35% adds up to like about 20 or 18, something like that. It's just know what you're getting. Okay, so the reason I said before that I took Talis fast throw, but I decided that I'm actually going to not take it, is I guess I'm more of a close medium range person. When I'm fighting, I'm doing more medium range. If you're doing long range, it's great, except I'm also not playing force main anymore. But just because if you test out throwing your Talis and trying to stop it as quickly as you can, so that way it's at like its minimum throw range, you'll see that increasing that speed is something you might not want to do. And I just wanted to test it out, and it's just not for me. I also didn't put a whole lot of effort to getting the Tech Charge JA edition. Just Attack Edition, because I'm more concerned with doing the charge damage, although I don't always do charge damage. And to me, making sure that my ability is charged, if that's what my goal is more important than it being a just attack. But this implies that charging your technique will gain the effect of a just attack. Whether you actually have to do a just attack while you're charging it or not, I will test that, and you'll get that in another video. I don't want to tell you wrong one way or the other, but I just told you the way it implies. For me, if I've got to do a just attack, it's not something I'm always going to do, although I try to do it. It's just less important than charging my attack. Also, the cooldown, but the main ability that I'll be using, Rabarta, has a 0.6 charge time anyway, or it was 0.8, something like that. I'll put it up on the screen so you can laugh. you may have been a little puzzled why I took this lightning tech PP preservation skill, but that is for my mode of transportation, and it's not just good for getting around the map, you know, keeping up with people who are way faster than you and probably do a crap ton of damage as well. But it allows me that when I'm low on my photon points, it gives me that opportunity to get away from danger and go recover. So for me, it's totally essential. For you, if you don't want it, don't worry about it. It's for my movement primarily, getting away and getting to the point. And that's going to also go pretty much the same with PP Restorate, as well as Territory PP Save. Now, if you're not planning to use your support abilities a lot, I can understand maybe skipping on that. But it also, like for me at least, it kind of goes with what I said about having access to Il Zonde with lower PP. If I need to use it, I have more opportunity to it. As well, I can share buffs with the team and get back to fighting without having to stand there and recoup. And since I pretty much got to skip by why I didn't take this 10% for the charge attack, or the 10% for the perfect attack, or the 10% for normal attack, I did want to mention that if you look up the abilities that you plan to use, your techniques that you plan to use, how their attacks work, some of them do actually benefit from your normal tech charge, or the uncharged tech. I guess a lot of them don't, but I just want to throw that out there, that before you totally write it off as I don't even care about that it does have utility with certain abilities and certain playstyles, so don't totally throw it out of the ring. Now, as for the dexterity, that's kind of a similar thing that you want to be looking up your techniques and their descriptions. A lot of them have a 100% dexterity conversion rate, where it converts your dexterity into your primary attack, or the attack that it's being used for, which in my case is going to be tech. Now, I could totally see if you wanted, instead of going in dexterity, you might want more extra PP. I totally get that. And I mean, technically, with this build, you could do that. I think people would have a conniption if the tree that I showed you had that on there. But I'm telling you straight up, if you want it, I thought about taking it for a second. And then I was like, wait a second, dex. So dex is supposed to increase your chance to crit and boost your overall highs, because your attacks are going to be different variables. And I should be able to get higher, more consistent attacks with higher dex. So as you can probably tell, just adding the 500 plus the 1100 that you get at the base, or for the meta build rather, not base. If you add them together, you get 1600, whereas if you took my build and you add them together, even without some of the extra decks that I plan to get later, you get 1900. So that's about 300 difference. And when most people are trying to squeeze out like 250, 350 kind of thing out of their armor, like out of each armor piece, to me, I think that's a pretty nice little difference at the cost that I'm only using primarily 2 elements. Now, if I cared more about the algorithms and your convenience, I would have ended this video. So that way it'd be a under 15-minute video and all that crap. But I do care about your convenience, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what a Splashy is and show you some of the abilities. Alright, now I'm about to get to the actual techniques themselves, but I did want to give one last little tip. If you have a duo partner, like this build is kind of intended for, one person can run Shifta branch and not D-ban, and the other person can run D-ban and not Shifta, and it kind of will give you guys a few more points to spend if you'd still like to do similar to this build, but have flexibility to do something else. Alright, so my bread and butter is going to be Rabarta. Okay, it's got a 0.8 second charge time. It is quite a bit longer than some other abilities. And it has a great status chance. The status chance is, of course, why I'm using it to splash. But that's not what's particularly interesting about it or how to use it effectively. You see, the first 2 hits are fast, and the second 2 are a bit delayed. And while fully charging it, will give you a better chance to land a status effect proc. If you are close enough in proximity when you cast it, you can release a charged, followed immediately by an uncharged, for more attacks to hit in succession. Because the window that's open for the status resistance is greater than the interval from the first to second tick, but less than the interval from the second to the third. So if you can shorten those intervals, you can actually have a sustained increased chance to proc the freeze because the window stays open for the resistance decrease. But don't think you're gonna get away with just spamming this thing uncharged, because it's not gonna do it's gonna do way less damage. And you're already not doing a ton of damage to most things, although your damage is broken up into 4 hits, as well as AoE. So to get the most mileage out of an area of effect attack, you're going to want to be casting where it's going to hit a lot of enemies simultaneously. That's really the bread and butter of this move. Otherwise, it's not really, anything special at all. Now, I'm personally planning, when crafting is out in the NA version, to have both multi-Rabarta Recipe 3 and Ice Fang Rabarta Recipe 3. The multi-Rabarta I'm going to be using for crowd control. I'll throw some Ice Fang Rabarta in there probably every now and again. But even though that plus 250% is pretty nice from the Ice Fang, the ability in itself isn't, like I said, it's not spectacular compared to a few other things that Forester Tekker could take. Like Rabarta down here is pretty good for bosses that move around a lot. I mean, if you want, just test them all out. This guide would be way longer than it already is going to be, 20 minutes or so, if I covered every single technique in the game. But the real bread and butter for the Falls bosses is going to be the light category, so I'm going to tell you about raw grants. Personally, I've never used these crafted techs, so I can't tell you how great the concentrated raw grants recipe is, reducing that cast down dramatically. But I can tell you that the brilliant raw grants recipe 3, that plus 800%, is definitely going to make this my go-to for attacking the boss, the Falls bosses. Alright, so Dark actually has a lot of really nice abilities, nice techniques. At least in my opinion, they're a bit costly, but it does have a lot of variety if you want to try them out before you decide on what element you're going to play. For me though, I am really super looking forward to Raw Megid Type O. The standard Raw Megid is pretty nice, and I know it's going to be a long time until I actually see Raw Megid Type O, but I am really super looking forward to it. I've no idea if it's any good or not, but I just want it. It looks like it does a pretty insane amount of damage, although with how squishy I am, there's that very real possibility that maybe you just die before it does all the damage and stuff like, one-shots you. So I wouldn't be thinking that this is the end-all be-all as well. There's probably a few downsides to it, but it does look very nice for a defensive measure. And it also has a hit stun, so if you didn't want to go ice, but you wanted to stun stuff, maybe at some point in the game you can just do this. Before I get to the Splashy and end the video, I'm just going to go ahead and say 2 things about lightning and 1 thing about wind, although I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder. Nzande is really awesome. I don't think there really needs to be anything else said about it, just Nzande, okay? Just try it. As for Ilzande, I hope the price is nice to you, because some people try to price gouge and it's kind of sucky, but it's not a very common drop, unfortunately. But just get it for your mobility if that's what you're using it for. Don't worry about the level, just go ahead and get it, because you'll love it. I also wanted to mention about Zanverse, some things that you might not know. While I do really like it as an ability, it's very nice, I like to use it. It could be a lot better if it didn't have so many restrictions, and you should probably read about when it will work and what it does and what it doesn't do. But the only time I've ever had anybody really comment about my playstyle was one time some people asked me to use Zan instead of Ice because of all the threat the Ice generates. But I guess they didn't realize that Zan, and Zanverse in particular, generates hate. So just to throw that out there, that yes, Rabarta will aggro pretty much everything except for the main boss that everybody's doing a ton of damage to. Everything will aggro to you. The boss does know you're there and will occasionally throw sneak attacks at you, because Rabarta does generate threat, even though I haven't seen anywhere it state that. But it is stated on the wiki that Zanverse will generate hate, which may or may not be the same thing as threat. So, what is a Splashy? I can't help but have fond memories about splashing. I guess for context, you should know that I played the GameCube Phantasy Star for 10 years, but splashing itself comes from a different MMO. It was a very niche build. Very, 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 very niche from a very, very, very old game. There was this Korean MMO called Cal Online, and in order to develop your skill tree, whether you were going as a damage mage or a healer mage, you did traditionally have to take at least one thing for an attack, and lightning was the better element, so everyone chose lightning. That's what made it niche, that because you already had to put points into an ability that was essentially an ice splashing ability, some people said, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and take ice. That way I have points to put into healing and support. That way you could still be not a pure healer, but really close to a pure healer buffer, but with an attack as well. Which sounds pretty stupid, but it actually got really good when you maxed it out. Like, under max, it sucked, but at max, it was pretty decent. And what you would use it for is splashing mobs. You would just go around and you'd get all the attention from the mobs, and then you just splash on them and kill hordes of people all at once. And it was a game where, you get hit 3 times and you're dead, and you lose your XP bar for the week or for the month, however long you had to grind, depending on what level you were. Like, the cost of death was high back then. So it was no joke, and people turned their nose up at you when they saw you coming. But there was a time when Splashy actually finally made its purpose known. When we got taken into the dungeons, a lot of the other healers were too afraid to go in there, and we would just splash all the trash mobs, the ones that are really fast and just annoying and come out of nowhere. They practically out of nowhere. They did have a spawn cycle, and thus the Splashy gaining respect was finally came into being. And other than that, you'd probably have never heard of such a thing in any game or any MMO. But essentially, it's a trash lord. It can rake in the gold. It can help power level noobs, generally for a fee. But that it was also an economy-based game where you provided services or items to players, and you traded, and you got paid for your time. I know a lot of modern games, the healer's expected to be a total heal bot, and that's all you do, and no respect if you miss one time, and it doesn't matter if you're like top of the line, first asked for several parties. If you screw up once, everybody's mad at you, and it's like, I'm fine with it. I generally kind of laugh, but it's stupid at the same time. It's a role, it's a class, it's not a job. I'm not getting paid to do it. If you want to pay me, that's a little different. But yeah, that's pretty much my build in a nutshell. So flame away. I don't have a Reddit account, so if you flame me on there, I won't be able to argue back. That's totally fair, isn't it? I look forward to it. In all seriousness, though, I welcome any comments or criticism. I am not trying to imply that this build is way better than the meta. I just had asked questions to people, and they were like erasing their builds or just like going silent on me. And me not getting an answer, I kind of wanted other people to at least have the opportunity to think about other options other than just the same cookie cutter, it's been this way for 8 years type of idea. And all in all, just have fun. Play the game. You don't even have to worry about the skill tree at all until you're ready to start facing, the in-game content and being that person who is one-shotting stuff above level super hard difficulty. Because you could one-shot stuff that's super hard without like any of this stuff like pretty easily. Just upgrade your weapon. Whether it's, picking up the best thing that you can get or, you buy occasionally. I hope you liked my guide. Sorry I'm not the most organized person, but I spent about a week trying to think of the essentials to give you and not take an hour. No disrespect to other people and their guides. We all make mistakes. Sometimes it's just an accident. Thanks for watching. I gotta go put all this video together. Sorry that I care more about the content I produce than the actual, quality of it looking like a television program. But I hope it was of use to you. If it was, please share it, maybe like it. That's it. Peace.